My name is Harper, and I'm 34 years old. I built my graphic design business from nothing into a thriving company with 15 employees. My whole life, I've been the responsible one, always working hard, while watching my younger brother Jason get everything handed to him on a silver platter. Our parents made their favoritism crystal clear from day one, but nothing prepared me for discovering they left all their assets to him in their will, while still expecting my financial support. When they had the audacity to say, "You don't mind helping out, right?" I finally snapped. I slammed the door in their faces, and the next day, I took things even further. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button while I share how I finally stood up for myself after decades of being taken for granted. I grew up in a quiet, middle-class neighborhood in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Our house was modest but comfortable with a neatly maintained lawn. My father, William, insisted on mowing himself every Saturday morning. Mom, Margaret, taught 4th grade at the local elementary school, while Dad worked as a regional manager for an insurance company. By all appearances, we were the picture-perfect American family. But appearances can be deceiving. From my earliest memories, it was clear that my brother Jason held a special place in my parents' hearts that I could never reach. Jason was born when I was 5, and I still remember my mother cooing that he was their miracle baby after they thought they couldn't have more children. While I was excited to be a big sister at first, I quickly learned that my role would be more caretaker than sibling. Harper, Watch Your Brother became the soundtrack of my childhood. By age 10, I was responsible for making his lunches, helping with his homework, and essentially becoming a third parent. Meanwhile, Jason could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. The contrast in how we were treated became painfully obvious during milestones and celebrations. When I brought home straight A's, my mother would nod and say, "That's what we expect from you, Harper." But when Jason managed to pull a B- in math after nearly failing, my parents took him out for ice cream and bought him a new video game as a reward for improving. My 16th birthday is something I'll never forget, though not for good reasons. I had dropped hints for weeks about a small gathering with my few close friends. The day came, and my parents completely forgot. They had scheduled one of Jason's soccer games during my birthday dinner. When I reminded them tearfully that morning, my mother looked genuinely surprised. "Oh, Harper, I'm sorry, but we can't miss Jason's game. It's an important one for his team. We'll celebrate your birthday next weekend, okay?" We never did. In contrast, Jason's birthdays were planned weeks in advance with themes, decorations, and presents that stretched our family's budget. For his 16th, my parents surprised him with a used car. I had to save up for 2 years after college to afford my first vehicle. College was another clear example of the disparity. Despite my excellent grades and acceptance to several good schools, my parents sat me down for a realistic talk about finances. "We just can't afford to pay your full tuition, Harper," my father explained. "You're smart and responsible. You can take out some loans and work part-time. It'll teach you good life skills." 4 years later, when it was Jason's turn, my parents had mysteriously found the means to cover his expenses entirely, even when he switched majors 3 times and took 6 years to graduate with mediocre grades. Despite everything, I was determined to prove myself. The day after high school graduation, I moved into a tiny apartment with 2 roommates and juggled 3 part-time jobs while taking a full course load. Sleep became a luxury as I pushed myself through design school, fueled by determination and cheap coffee. During my junior year of college, I started taking on small freelance graphic design projects. I'd stay up until 3 in the morning working on logos for local businesses, flyers for campus events, anything to build my portfolio and make extra money. While my classmates partied, I was building the foundation of what would eventually become my company. It was during this time that I met Thomas. He was working as a barista at the campus coffee shop, where I spent countless hours hunched over my laptop. He started saving me the corner table by the outlet and bringing me fresh coffee without me having to ask. One day, he sat down during his break and asked about the website I was designing. "That looks professional," he said, genuinely impressed. "You're going to be successful someday." Those simple words of acknowledgement meant everything to me after years of having my efforts overlooked. Thomas became my biggest cheerleader, and our friendship gradually blossomed into romance. Despite putting distance between myself and my family, I never completely cut ties. Some part of me still craved their approval, still believed that if I achieved enough, they would finally see me. Every holiday and birthday, I would return home bearing gifts and stories of my small victories, hoping this would be the time they'd truly listen. It never was. When I graduated summa cum laude with my design degree, my parents attended the ceremony but left early because Jason had a fraternity event they didn't want to miss. I tried not to let the disappointment show as I posed for pictures with Thomas and my roommates instead. "They're proud of you in their own way," Thomas suggested on the drive back to our apartments. "Some people just don't know how to show it." I nodded, but we both knew it wasn't true. The truth was much simpler and much more painful. Jason was their favorite, and nothing I did would ever change that. By the time I turned 34, my little hobby, as my mother often called it, had transformed into Hunter Design Group, a respected firm with 15 full-time employees and a portfolio of national clients. We specialized in branding and website development for small to medium businesses looking to establish a strong digital presence. After years of working from my apartment, then a small office share, I finally had a beautiful open-concept studio in the Arts District downtown. The wall of our reception area displayed awards from design competitions and framed thank you letters from clients whose businesses had grown after our rebranding work. I had built something meaningful, something that not only provided me with financial security, but also gave opportunities to young designers fresh out of college. I made sure to mentor them properly, knowing how difficult those early career years could be without support. One particularly proud moment was purchasing my first home at 32. After years of saving and building my credit, I bought a charming 2-story craftsman-style house with a wraparound porch and enough yard space for the garden I'd always wanted. The day I got the keys, Thomas took a photo of me standing on the porch, grinning like a fool, with the house keys dangling from my fingers. Thomas and I had been together for almost 10 years by then, supporting each other through the ups and downs of building our respective careers. He had left his barista days behind and now managed a successful fair trade coffee shop. When he proposed during a weekend trip to Lake Michigan with the sunset painting the water golden, I couldn't imagine a more perfect moment. We set the wedding date for the following spring and began planning our future together. Despite all my personal and professional achievements, my parents' reaction remained underwhelming. When I called to tell them about the house, my mother's first response was, "Isn't that a lot for you to manage on your own?" As if I hadn't been managing everything on my own since I was 18. When I announced my engagement, my father's response was, "Well, it's about time. We were starting to worry about you." Never mind that Thomas and I had been building our careers and relationship at our own pace. Never mind that we were completely happy with our choices. In contrast, my parents fawned over Jason's every minor accomplishment. He had bounced between various career paths since college, never sticking with anything long enough to build expertise or seniority. There was the year he decided to become a real estate agent, then abandoned it 6 months later when he realized it required actual work to make commissions. Then came his brief stint in pharmaceutical sales, followed by an even shorter attempt at opening a sports memorabilia shop that my parents partially funded. Through it all, my parents would sing his praises at family gatherings. "Jason has such diverse experience," my mother would say proudly. "He's really finding his path." What they called diverse experience, most people would call an inability to commit. But Jason had always been charming with an easy smile and the gift of making others feel good about themselves. He would show up at family events with entertaining stories and small gifts that delighted our parents, masterfully distracting from the fact that he was once again between jobs. When Jason married Amanda after a whirlwind 6-month romance, my parents threw them an elaborate wedding that cost more than I could imagine. Amanda seemed nice enough, if a bit shallow, and she quickly adapted to the family dynamic, joining my parents in their Jason worship while treating me with polite indifference. Family gatherings became increasingly uncomfortable as the years passed. I would sit through dinners listening to lengthy discussions of Jason's latest business idea or Amanda's yoga certification, while any mention of my company's achievements was met with quick acknowledgement before the conversation swiftly returned to more interesting topics. "That's nice, Harper," my mother would say when I mentioned landing a major client. "Did you hear Jason is thinking about getting into cryptocurrency?" After one particularly frustrating Christmas dinner where my parents spent 30 minutes discussing Jason's plan to flip houses despite him having no construction experience or startup capital, Thomas found me crying in my old bedroom. "You know their approval doesn't define your worth, right?" he said, sitting beside me on the twin bed that still had my high school debate team pennant hanging above it. "I know that logically," I replied, wiping away tears. "But emotionally, it still hurts." That January, I started seeing a therapist. Dr. Larson helped me understand that the family dynamics weren't my fault and that I couldn't change my parents' behavior. All I could control was my own responses. "Setting boundaries isn't selfish," she reminded me during one session. "It's necessary for your mental health." I began the slow process of adjusting my expectations and limiting my emotional investment in my parents' approval. Thomas supported me every step of the way, gently reminding me when I was falling back into old patterns of overextending myself to please people who would never be satisfied. Still, I maintained contact and made efforts to preserve family harmony. I sent birthday gifts, made monthly phone calls, and showed up for holidays with a smile pasted on my face. Some part of me couldn't let go of the hope that someday, somehow things would change. Everything shifted 3 years ago when my father called me on a Tuesday evening in October. I was working late at the office, finalizing designs for a major presentation the next day. "Harper, we need to talk," he said, his voice uncharacteristically serious. "Your mother and I are facing some financial difficulties." I sat back in my chair, surprised. My father had always projected an image of financial security, priding himself on smart investments and careful planning. It was one of the few traits we actually shared. "What kind of difficulties?" I asked, already feeling a knot forming in my stomach. "Can you come by the house this weekend? It's not something I want to discuss over the phone." That Saturday, I arrived at my parents' home to find them looking older and more vulnerable than I had ever seen them. My mother's hands trembled slightly as she poured coffee, and my father's normally perfect posture was stooped with what looked like the weight of worry. They explained that a combination of factors had created a perfect financial storm. Dad had invested heavily in his friend's business venture, which had gone bankrupt unexpectedly. Their retirement portfolio had taken significant hits during the last economic downturn. Most pressing of all, my mother's recent diagnosis of rheumatoid arthritis required expensive treatments that their insurance only partially covered. "We've had to use most of our savings," my father explained, the admission clearly painful for him. "And the medical bills keep coming." "Where's Jason in all this?" I asked. "Have you talked to him?" My parents exchanged glances before my mother replied. "You know how it is with your brother. He's got his own challenges right now. The house-flipping business hasn't taken off yet, and they just put a deposit down on that vacation timeshare." Of course, Jason's problems always took precedence even when our parents were the ones in crisis. "So, what are you asking from me?" I kept my voice level professional, even as if they were clients presenting a problem to be solved, rather than parents who had consistently overlooked me. "We hate to ask this of you," my father said, though the ease with which the words came out suggested otherwise. "But we were hoping you might be able to help us with some of the medical expenses, just until we get back on our feet." I could see the complex emotions playing across their faces: embarrassment at needing to ask for help, resentment that they had to come to me, the daughter they had always expected less from, and underneath it all, a certain entitlement, as if my success meant I owed them. "I'll need to look at exactly what we're talking about," I said finally. "Bring your bills, your budget, everything. I want to see the complete picture before I commit to anything." Over the next few weeks, I helped them organize their finances, shocked at the extent of the mess they had created. My father had made a series of increasingly risky investments trying to recoup his initial losses. They had been putting everyday expenses on credit cards with astronomical interest rates, and my mother's medical treatments were indeed costly, with more procedures recommended by her doctors. After consulting with Thomas and my financial advisor, I set up a plan. I would cover my mother's medical expenses not covered by insurance. I would help them restructure their mortgage to lower monthly payments, and I would set up a monthly stipend to help them cover basic necessities while they got back on their feet. "This isn't an indefinite arrangement," I made clear as we sat at their kitchen table finalizing the details. "I'm helping you through this crisis, but you need to work with the financial advisor I've found to make better decisions going forward." They agreed readily, gratitude momentarily overriding their usual dismissiveness toward me. During this entire process, Jason remained conspicuously absent. He and Amanda lived just 20 minutes away, but he claimed his house-flipping business kept him too busy to help sort through our parents' financial issues. I would occasionally run into him when visiting our parents, and he would thank me for handling all that money stuff, as if I were taking care of a minor household chore, rather than preventing our parents from potential bankruptcy. For 2 years, I maintained this arrangement. Each month, I transferred money into their account. I accompanied my mother to medical appointments and paid the bills directly. I checked in with their financial advisor to ensure they were staying on track with the recovery plan we had established. Thomas questioned my decision more than once. "They never supported you this way," he pointed out one evening as I reviewed their monthly expenses. "Do you really think they would do the same for you if the situations were reversed?" "Probably not," I admitted, "but they're still my parents." "And Jason is still their son," Thomas countered gently. "Where's his contribution to all this?" I had no good answer. The truth was, I had fallen back into my childhood role of responsibility and caretaking, while Jason continued to receive exemptions and excuses. But family dynamics are hard to break, and some part of me still hoped that this time, finally, my parents would see my value. Over time, as their situation stabilized somewhat, their attitude began to shift back to the old patterns. My mother would complain about the budget restrictions, while in the same breath telling me about the expensive golf clubs they had bought for Jason's birthday. My father would question my business decisions during our financial review meetings, suggesting ways I could really grow my company despite his own financial failures. The gratitude that had initially softened their treatment of me gradually dissipated, replaced by the familiar expectation that Harper would handle everything while they focused their affection and attention on Jason. The revelation came unexpectedly on a spring afternoon last year. I had stopped by my parents' house to help my mother organize her medical records for an upcoming specialist appointment. While searching for some documents in their home office, I came across a folder labeled Estate Planning. I wouldn't normally have opened it respecting their privacy, but it had fallen from a stack of papers, its contents spilling partially onto the floor. As I gathered the papers to return them to the folder, my eyes caught a glimpse of something that made my heart stutter. It was their will updated just 3 months earlier. I found myself reading it, unable to stop despite the growing hollowness in my chest. The document was clear and unambiguous. Upon their deaths, all assets, the house, the remaining investments, my father's life insurance policy, everything would go to Jason. My name appeared nowhere in the document. Not as a secondary beneficiary, not for any specific item of sentimental value. Nowhere. I checked the date again, confirming that this was indeed created well into the period when I had been providing them significant financial support. While I had been paying their medical bills and subsidizing their living expenses, they had been meeting with a lawyer to ensure that Jason received everything they had. The room seemed to tilt around me. I sat down heavily in my father's desk chair, the papers trembling in my hands. It wasn't about the money itself. I had built my own financial security and didn't need their assets. It was the absolute clarity of the message. No matter what I did, no matter how much I helped them, I would never be as important as Jason. I heard my mother calling me from downstairs, asking if I had found the medical records yet. Somehow, I managed to replace the estate documents, find the records she needed, and get through the rest of the visit without betraying the turmoil inside me. I drove home in a fog of disbelief and hurt tears blurring the road ahead. Thomas found me sitting in our parked car in the garage, still gripping the steering wheel, unable to move. Harper, what happened? His concern broke through my numbness, and I found myself sobbing as I hadn't since I was a child. Between gasping breaths, I told him what I had discovered. His expression shifted from concern to outrage. After everything you've done for them, are you kidding me? He paced our garage, running his hands through his hair in frustration. This is beyond favoritism, Harper. I don't even have words for what this is. I kept thinking if I did enough, if I was successful enough, responsible enough, they would finally see me, I whispered. But they never will. That night, I barely slept. I replayed my entire relationship with my parents, every disappointment, every unequal treatment, every moment I had swallowed my hurt, and told myself to try harder. By morning, I felt different. The hurt was still there, but something else had emerged alongside it, a clarity I had never experienced before. I called my parents and told them I needed to speak with them. My father suggested Saturday, but I insisted on that same day. Something in my tone must have conveyed the seriousness because they agreed without further argument. The drive to their house felt different this time. Instead of the usual anxiety about whether I would measure up, I felt a strange calm. The decision had been made for me long ago. I just hadn't been ready to accept it until now. They were waiting in the living room when I arrived, looking mildly concerned. Is everything all right, Harper? You sounded upset on the phone, my mother began. No, everything is not all right, I replied, remaining standing rather than taking the offered seat. I found your updated will yesterday. The color drained from my father's face, while my mother's hand flew to her throat in a gesture of surprise that seemed rehearsed. You weren't meant to see that, my father said finally. Clearly. But I did see it, and now we need to talk about it. It's not what you think. My mother tried her voice, taking on the placating tone she had always used when I expressed any hurt or disappointment. It's exactly what I think. You've left everything to Jason, nothing to me, while I've been supporting you financially for the past 2 years. My father straightened his shoulders, shifting from embarrassment to defensiveness. Jason needs it more than you do. You have your business, your house. He's still finding his way. He's 38 years old, Dad. He's not finding his way. He's avoiding responsibility, and you're enabling him. You've always been harder on your brother than we are, my mother interjected. He has different talents, different challenges. This isn't about Jason, I said firmly. This is about how you've treated me my entire life. I've worked hard for everything I have. I put myself through college, built my business from nothing, and when you needed help, I stepped up. And this is how you repay me, by making it crystal clear that I will never be as important to you as he is. You're being dramatic, my father dismissed. It's just a will. It's not like we're dying tomorrow. It's not just a will. It's a statement. It's the culmination of a lifetime of showing me exactly where I stand with you. My mother's expression softened into what I recognized as her manipulation face, the one she used when she wanted something from me. Harper, sweetheart, you know we appreciate everything you've done for us. But Jason has Amanda, and they might have children someday. They'll need the financial support more than you will. And what about my future children? What about the family Thomas and I hope to have? Don't they deserve the same consideration? My parents exchanged glances, clearly having never considered this possibility. Well, my father said finally with a shrug that dismissed decades of hurt in a single gesture. You've always been the responsible one, Harper. You don't mind helping out, right? That's what you've always done. And there it was, the assumption that had defined my entire existence in their eyes. Harper will handle it. Harper doesn't mind. Harper will give and give while receiving nothing in return. The sheer entitlement of it struck me like a physical blow. Something inside me finally broke free. Years of suppressed anger and hurt came rushing out. Are you serious right now? You think I don't mind? You think I haven't minded being treated like a second-class member of this family my entire life? My voice was shaking, but for once, I didn't try to control it. I didn't try to be the reasonable one, the responsible one, the one who would smooth things over. I have minded. Every single day I have minded. When you forgot my 16th birthday, but threw a 3-day celebration for Jason's. When you paid his full college tuition, but made me take out loans. When you dismissed my business as a little hobby, even as it grew into a company that employs 15 people. When you call me only when you need something, but you call Jason just to chat. My parents stared at me in shock. They had never seen this version of me before, the one who refused to swallow her pain to keep the peace. We've always been proud of you, my mother attempted weakly. No, you've always expected me to achieve while withholding your approval. You've treated my success as the bare minimum while celebrating Jason's smallest efforts. And now, after I've spent 2 years helping you financially, you've made it official that I mean nothing in your estate plans. My father's face hardened. You're being ungrateful. After all we've done for you. What exactly have you done for me? I challenged. Name one thing in my adult life that you've truly supported me through. One time, you put me first. One sacrifice you made for my benefit. The silence that followed was deafening. Just then, the front door opened, and Jason walked in with Amanda trailing behind him. Their timing couldn't have been worse, or perhaps it was perfect. Hey, what's going on? Jason asked, looking between our tense faces. We were in the neighborhood and thought we'd stop by. Your sister is upset about the will, my father explained, as if I were throwing a tantrum over a trivial matter. Jason's expression showed genuine confusion. What will? They updated their will 3 months ago, I explained, turning to face my brother directly. Everything goes to you, 100%. Oh. He at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. I didn't know about that. Amanda stepped forward, her perfectly highlighted hair swinging. Well, to be fair, Harper, you are doing really well with your business. It's not like you need the money. This isn't about need, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. This is about being valued equally as their child. This is about them accepting my financial help for 2 years while planning to leave me nothing, not even a memento. Jason glanced at our parents. Is that true? Has Harper been supporting you guys financially? She's helped with some medical bills, my mother downplayed. But that's what family does. We've helped you plenty of times too. I laughed a short, bitter sound. Some medical bills I've given you over $78,000 in the last 2 years. I've paid for Mom's treatments, restructured your mortgage, and provided monthly support for your living expenses. Jason's eyes widened. 78,000? And all while they've been telling me how much they appreciate me, they were meeting with lawyers to ensure I was completely written out of their will. The room fell silent. For once, my parents seemed at a loss for words. Jason shifted uncomfortably, while Amanda suddenly became very interested in her manicure. I looked at all of them. My parents, who would never see me as equal to my brother. My brother, who had benefited from their favoritism his entire life without ever questioning it. His wife, who enabled the whole dysfunctional system. In that moment, I saw with perfect clarity that nothing would ever change unless I changed my participation in this dynamic. I'm done, I said, my voice calm now. I'm done trying to earn your approval. I'm done being the responsible one who picks up all the pieces. I'm done giving and giving while receiving nothing in return. What are you saying? My mother asked, a note of panic creeping into her voice. I'm saying that as of today, your financial support from me ends. I'm saying that I need space from this family and the way you've treated me. I'm saying that I deserve better, and I'm finally going to prioritize my own well-being. I walked toward the door, feeling lighter with each step. My father called after me. Harper, you're overreacting. We can discuss this reasonably. I turned back one last time. There's nothing reasonable about how you've treated me. And for once, I'm not going to pretend there is. With that, I walked out and slammed the door behind me with all the force of my decades of suppressed hurt and anger. The sound was satisfying in a way I couldn't fully articulate, a physical manifestation of the boundary I was finally setting. In my car, I sat for a moment, hands trembling on the steering wheel. But unlike the trembling of the day before, this wasn't from hurt. It was from adrenaline, from the exhilaration of finally standing up for myself. As I drove home, my phone started buzzing with texts and calls from my parents and Jason. I ignored them all. This was my moment of clarity, and I wasn't going to let them cloud it with manipulations and justifications. Thomas was waiting for me when I arrived home. One look at my face told him everything he needed to know. You did it, he said. It wasn't a question. I did. I fell into his embrace, emotions washing over me in waves. I told them I'm done. I slammed the door on my way out, literally slammed it. He held me tighter. I'm so proud of you. That night, I slept better than I had in years, despite the uncertainty of what would come next. I had taken the first step toward freeing myself from patterns that had constrained me my entire life. But I knew that a dramatic exit wasn't enough. I needed to ensure that the boundaries I had declared would remain firm. The next morning, I woke with a clarity of purpose. If I was really going to change this dynamic, I needed to take it further. After a restless night filled with both doubt and determination, I woke early the next morning with a clear plan in mind. This wasn't just about an emotional confrontation. This was about systematically restructuring my relationship with my family to protect my well-being. My first call was to Dr. Larson, my therapist, requesting an emergency session. Thankfully, she had an opening that morning due to a cancellation. What you're feeling is completely normal, she assured me after I recounted the previous day's events. Setting boundaries with family is one of the hardest things we do, especially when there are long-standing patterns of inequality and emotional manipulation. But am I overreacting? I asked, voicing the doubt my father had planted. Harper, from what you've described, you've spent your entire life underreacting. You've consistently subordinated your needs and feelings to maintain family harmony. What you're doing now isn't an overreaction, it's a healthy response to a toxic situation. With her validation strengthening my resolve, I moved to the next step in my plan. I called my financial advisor, Marcus, and explained the situation. I need to completely separate my finances from my parents, I told him. All automatic payments, all support arrangements, everything needs to end. I can help with that, Marcus replied. But I should warn you, this type of financial separation can be complicated, especially when there's been ongoing support. I understand, but it's necessary. Over the next few hours, we systematically dismantled the financial connections I had established to help my parents. We canceled the automatic transfers to their account. We contacted the medical billing departments to remove my payment information from my mother's treatments. We spoke with their mortgage lender to make it clear that I would no longer be involved in any communications or arrangements regarding their home loan. Next, I contacted my lawyer, Elaine, who had helped me with business contracts and my own estate planning. I want to send a formal letter terminating the financial support I've been providing to my parents, I explained. And I want to document exactly how much I've given them over the past 2 years. That's a good idea, Elaine agreed. Creating a paper trail is important, especially if there's any dispute later about verbal agreements or expectations. With her guidance, we drafted a clear, legally sound letter outlining the termination of financial support. It included an itemized list of all the money I had provided, $78,342.17 to be exact. The letter was professional and factual, avoiding emotional language while making my position unmistakably clear. Do you want to include any conditions for potential future reconciliation? Elaine asked. I considered this carefully. No, I don't want to offer any false hope or create openings for manipulation. This needs to be a clean break, at least financially. As Elaine finalized the letter, I turned my attention to managing the inevitable barrage of communication. My phone had been buzzing constantly since I left my parents' house the previous day. 23 missed calls and 47 text messages from various family members. My parents' messages ranged from angry, "You're being childish and ungrateful," to manipulative, "Your mother is very upset and her blood pressure is concerning." Jason had sent several confused texts asking what was going on, claiming our parents weren't explaining things clearly. Even Amanda had messaged defending Jason and suggesting I was being unfair to him. More surprisingly, extended family members had begun reaching out as well. Aunts, uncles, and cousins I rarely spoke with, suddenly concerned about the family drama. It was clear my parents were mobilizing their social network against me. With Thomas's help, I drafted a template response and set it up as an automatic reply to any family member who contacted me. I appreciate your concern. I'm taking some space from family interactions to focus on my well-being. I won't be responding to messages during this time. Thank you for understanding. Do you want to block their numbers completely? Thomas asked as we set this up. Not yet, I decided. I want to see what they say even if I'm not responding. It's information that might be useful later. The most difficult decision was determining the duration of this break. After careful consideration, I decided on 1 month of complete no contact. Not because I expected everything to be resolved by then, but because I needed time to process my feelings without their influence. Throughout the day, my email and phone continued to light up with family communications. My father sent a particularly manipulative email copying my mother's doctor and suggesting that my abandonment was affecting her health. I forwarded it to Dr. Larson, who confirmed it was a classic manipulation tactic. They're trying to make you responsible for their well-being, she said. That's not your burden to carry. By evening, the letter from my lawyer had been finalized and sent via certified mail to ensure my parents couldn't claim they hadn't received it. I had systematically cut all financial ties and established a communication boundary, but there was one more step I felt compelled to take. I wrote a personal email to Jason separate from the automatic responses I had set up. In it, I explained my perspective clearly without the heightened emotions of our confrontation. For our entire lives, our parents have treated us unequally. I've accepted this and built my own life despite it. What I can no longer accept is being expected to provide financial support while being completely excluded from their estate planning. This isn't about money, it's about respect and recognition. I'm taking time away from the family to reassess these relationships. I hope someday you can understand my position. I didn't expect a thoughtful response, and I didn't receive one. Jason replied with a brief message about how I was making things weird and should just talk to Mom and Dad. It confirmed what I already knew: he was too entrenched in his role as the golden child to see the dysfunction clearly. The response from extended family was more varied and surprising. While most parroted my parents' perspective that I was being dramatic and selfish, a few reached out with understanding. My Aunt Patricia, my mother's sister, sent a particularly supportive message. "I've watched how they've treated you for years, Harper. It broke my heart, but I never knew how to intervene. Your mother did the same to me when we were growing up. Take the space you need. I'm here when you're ready to talk." Her message was a revelation. The pattern I had experienced was generational. Somehow knowing that made it easier to break free from it. As the days passed, I maintained my boundaries despite escalating attempts to breach them. My parents showed up at my office unannounced, only to be politely turned away by my receptionist, who had been briefed on the situation. They tried to reach me through Thomas, who firmly but kindly redirected them to respect my wishes for space. The liberation I felt was accompanied by grief for the supportive parents. I had never had grief for the energy I had wasted seeking approval I would never receive. But amid that grief was a growing sense of empowerment. For the first time, I was prioritizing my own emotional health over family expectations. Thomas witnessed this transformation with a mixture of pride and concern. "You seem different," he observed one evening as we sat on our porch watching the sunset. "Lighter somehow." "I feel lighter," I admitted. "Like I've put down a burden I've been carrying my whole life." "What about the wedding?" he asked gently. "It's only 3 months away." I had been avoiding thinking about this complication. Our wedding plans included my family, of course, with my father slated to walk me down the aisle despite our strained relationship. After a moment's consideration, I made yet another decision that would have been unthinkable just days before. "Let's move it up," I suggested. "Let's have a small ceremony, just us and our closest friends. No family drama, no performances of roles that don't reflect reality. Just us, celebrating our love honestly." Thomas's smile told me everything I needed to know. "That sounds perfect." With that decision, I felt the last piece of my transformation click into place. I was no longer organizing my life around family expectations. I was creating the life I actually wanted with people who genuinely supported me. 6 months passed, bringing changes I could never have imagined when I first slammed that door. The most profound shift was internal. The constant background anxiety that had accompanied me throughout life, the worry about measuring up, about earning approval that never came, had gradually faded. In its place grew a steady confidence in my own worth, independent of anyone else's validation. After my month-long communication break, I cautiously re-established limited contact with my parents. Our interactions now occurred on my terms, scheduled phone calls every other Sunday, lasting exactly 30 minutes. No dropping by unannounced, no emergency demands for attention or resources. My parents struggled to adapt to these new boundaries. My father would frequently test them, calling outside our agreed times, or bringing up financial matters despite my explicit statement that those topics were off limits. Each attempt was met with the same calm response from me. I understand you want to discuss this, but as I've made clear, that's not something I'm willing to engage with. We can either talk about something else, or we can end this call. Sometimes we ended the call. But gradually, they began to adjust to the new reality where their daughter was no longer at their beck and call. Jason made his own attempts to restore the old dynamic. 2 months after our confrontation, he called asking to grab coffee and catch up, which turned out to be a thinly veiled attempt to borrow money for yet another business venture. I'm not in a position to invest in that right now, I told him firmly, using the neutral language Dr. Larson had helped me practice. Come on, Harper, he pressed, flashing the charming smile that had always worked on our parents. It's not like you don't have the money. This could be huge. My financial situation isn't relevant, I replied. I'm not interested in mixing family and business. I wish you luck finding other investors. His reaction was predictably childish accusations that I was holding a grudge and punishing him for mom and dad's decisions. I simply repeated that my boundaries weren't punishment. They were protection. My parents faced the real consequences of their financial decisions for perhaps the first time. Without my support, they had to downsize, selling their house and moving into a smaller condominium. My father, who had been semi-retired, returned to work part-time as a consultant. They cut back on the lavish gifts they had always bestowed on Jason and Amanda. These changes weren't easy for them. My mother particularly struggled with the loss of status among her friends. During one of our Sunday calls, she made a halting attempt at what might have been an apology. We never meant to make you feel less important, she said carefully. We just always knew you would be okay. You were always so capable. It wasn't a true acknowledgement of the hurt they had caused, but it was the closest she had ever come. I recognized it as progress, however small. Being capable doesn't mean I didn't need support and recognition, I replied. I hope you can understand that someday. Thomas and I had our wedding 3 months after the confrontation, much earlier than originally planned. It was an intimate ceremony in the botanical gardens with just 30 guests, close friends, who had become our chosen family. My Aunt Patricia was the only blood relative I invited, and her presence was a balm to the lingering sadness of celebrating without the family I had been born into. The day was perfect in its simplicity and authenticity. No one walked me down the aisle. Thomas and I entered together, symbolizing the partnership we had built. Our vows spoke of the family we were creating between us, one based on mutual respect and genuine support rather than obligation. My business continued to thrive, and I found new joy in mentoring young designers, particularly those who, like me, had navigated difficult family dynamics or lacked traditional support systems. I volunteered monthly at a program teaching design skills to high school students from underserved communities. Giving back in this way healed something in me that family therapy alone couldn't touch. The most unexpected development came 4 months after our confrontation when Jason called me on a Tuesday evening. His voice lacked the usual charm and bravado. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, he began awkwardly, about how Mom and Dad treated us differently. I waited, not offering the easy reassurance I would have rushed to provide in the past. I never really saw it before, he continued. I mean, I knew they were harder on you, but I thought that was just because you were the oldest. But after everything that happened, I started paying attention. And you were right. It was the validation I had craved for decades, coming from the least expected source. Thank you for saying that, I replied simply. I'm sorry, he added. I benefited from it my whole life and never questioned it. That wasn't fair to you. We didn't become best friends overnight. Decades of ingrained patterns don't disappear with one conversation. But it was the beginning of a more honest relationship between us. Jason started making his own adjustments, setting boundaries with our parents, and taking more responsibility for his life. He even found steady work managing a sporting goods store, the longest he had ever stayed in one job. Through all these changes, I continued working with Dr. Larson, processing the complex emotions that came with restructuring my family relationships. Some days were harder than others. Holidays especially brought waves of grief for the family connections I had wished for, but never truly had. Grief doesn't mean you made the wrong decision, Dr. Larson reminded me during one particularly difficult session around Christmas. It means you're honoring the depth of what you hoped for and lost. The life lessons from this journey were profound, reshaping how I understood myself and my relationships. I learned that self-worth can't be outsourced to others, especially those who have proven unwilling to recognize your value. I discovered that boundaries aren't walls to keep people out, but guidelines for how you allow yourself to be treated. I understood that helping others should never come at the cost of your own well-being, and that true generosity isn't born from obligation, but from freely given love. Most importantly, I realized that family isn't just about blood and birth. It's about who shows up for you, who celebrates your victories, and supports you through difficulties. It's about mutual respect and recognition. And sometimes, the family you create through choice is more nurturing than the one you were born into. 6 months after slamming that door, I stood in a very different place than I could have imagined. Not because my parents had suddenly transformed into the supportive figures I had always craved they hadn't, and likely never would completely, but because I had finally stopped organizing my life around earning approval that was never forthcoming. The door I slammed that day wasn't just on my parents' house. It was on patterns of behavior that had limited me my entire life. And in closing that door, I opened so many windows to new possibilities, new ways of relating to myself and others, and a new freedom to live authentically. I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I had never discovered that will, if I had continued supporting my parents while they planned to exclude me from their legacy. Would I have eventually found another breaking point? Another moment of clarity? Or would I have continued the exhausting work of trying to earn love that should have been freely given? I'll never know for sure. But what I do know is that sometimes the most difficult choices lead to the most necessary growth. And sometimes slamming a door is the first step to finding your way home to yourself. Have you ever had to set a difficult boundary with family? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Remember that you deserve to be valued exactly as you are. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you strength and clarity on yours.